Mario, how's life?
Coach Mike, how's it going? Long time no see.
Long time no see.
How you
Hopefully, we
been?
can get back out there. Zaza.
Yeah, hopefully soon enough. You've been good?
Yeah, man. Days. It's more of the same. I'm chomping at the bit. Yeah, I want to get back out there and play again, but
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
there. I
dying
think we
for
can.
that. Yeah.
Right, so we'll let's just see here. I think we've got, yeah, I just want to make sure everyone is in.
Sorry, and then Lauren.
Pardon me, Lawrence? Lawrence, are you there?
Oh, yep, but no, that wasn't me.
Oh, okay, should I go ahead and get started?
Yeah, I think so. We have 31 people on
Okay.
here, so I'm going to record the meeting as well. So if anyone misses anything, we'll send that out.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you everyone for coming out. We thought, first of all, my name is Craig. For those of you who don't know me, Craig Mercer. I'm the tennis director at Toronto Tennis City. And this evening we are interviewing Mike Kokta, who recently joined us. He joined us in September as our high performance coach at Ace Tennis in Toronto. And we thought it'd be a good idea to introduce Mike to the whole academy at both locations, and just to pick his brain a little bit. Mike has had a long career in the sport as a player. First of all, as a junior, he finished as high as number 8 in the world, ITF. And he played junior Grand Slams.
People separated in the stands.
Too much, man.
Could everyone just mute?
And then all the tennis can get the blame for it.
Exactly. And I'm going to see how this.
Why would they have that? They've been having cricket doing test matches. Because when I was in Jamaica, when I was in Jamaica, Tony and I were watching cricket, and I have a lot of people watching, crowd. But not as much as I see.
Doug, could you please mic?
Quite a lot.
Lawrence, can you mute everybody?
Yeah, Craig, if you can just unmute yourself and Mike. Oh, here.
Craig, you're on mute.
Here I can.
All right.
There you go.
Can you hear me? All right, perfect. We're back. Okay, yeah, so basically I was just giving a little intro on Mike's background. So for those of you who don't know, of course, Mike, again, played in junior Grand Slam tournaments, number 8 in the world in the juniors, played college tennis, and made it as high as top about 350 ATP. He has quite a background as a player, but then also he was a coach in the US and coached at the Division I level at a few different universities. And Mike is going to give us a little bit of his background through my questions, so you'll learn more about him. But just a really good person, I think, for us to learn from his experiences, and for all you kids who are there and working on your games and aspire to be college level, Division I level players one day, or play on the pro tour. Mike would be a good guy to just learn from some of his experiences. So I guess we'll kick it off. So first of all, Mike, how are you?
I'm good, Craig. Thanks for asking. Thanks for that awesome intro. I appreciate it. I wish we could be out on the courts getting better with everybody, but the times we live in are a little different. Hopefully we can get back out there sooner rather than later, but I'm hanging in there.
That's good. And you're staying active and helping the kids out, so that's great.
Yeah, sure. We do these. We've had great turnouts on these Zoom workouts, and it's been good for me to see everybody on a almost daily basis and stay engaged and stay involved. And Sam usually does the workout Monday, Wednesday. I do it Tuesday, Thursday, so I get to stay in shape. So it's a win-win for me.
That's great. So I guess I first want to start off by just asking you some questions about your when you started the sport. So how old were you when you got started, Mike?
So for me, and I guess what I'm doing and the life that I'm living right now and where I'm living started off when I was about 5 or 6 years old. That's when I took my first tennis lesson, and that's when I took my first English lesson. So for those of you that don't know, I was born in Prague, Czech Republic. So English isn't my first language. And my mom, when I was 5 or 6, sort of decided that I was going to take English as a first language. And I was one of the first generation where we didn't have to take Russian, because Czechoslovakia used to be on the other side of the Berlin Wall. So English was the language that I was going to do. And tennis was one of the first sports that I tried. So I took my first lesson when I was about 5 or 6. And I want to say I played my tournament, maybe 3-4 years later, right around when I was about 9 or 10 years old.
Okay. Yeah. And then how did you get involved in the sport?
So it's a bit of a longish story, but I'll try to make it short. So neither my mom nor dad have any background in tennis. They're sports fans, but they've never done any sport at a high level. And my mom decided that I was going to do a sport because that's just what you did as a little boy in Czech. So I went to soccer practice and I went to ice hockey practice, and for some reason those didn't click. And my mom's a high school teacher, and one of her friends, another teacher back then, suggested that I go try out tennis. So the first tennis practice I went to was somewhere in Prague in this small little gym, and it was 20 of us kids in a row, and there was a tennis ball on a string, and you sort of waited your turn, and then you hit the ball, and then you went to the end of the line, and I got to talk with my friends, and I didn't sweat too much, and for some reason I thought that this was the sport that I would enjoy. So I was happy that I did something where I could hang out with my buddies, and my mom was happy that I did a sport, and we sort of took it from there. So it was a pretty innocent beginning. But like I said, neither my mom nor my dad have really played ever. If you put my mom or my dad on tennis courts, they wouldn't know what to do. So I was the first one in the family to pick up a tennis racket.
Wow, it's interesting. And then once you got involved in playing tournaments, what sort of involvement did your parents have?
So I think I got lucky in a way where they've always been extremely supportive. My mom was always more into the school part of things. It was always important that I maintain my grades and that I study and apply myself in school. My dad was the one taking me to tournaments over the weekends. So they sort of split it up that way. But one thing that I think really helped me is they never try to coach me. My parents were just the parents, and my coaches did the coaching. So when I was at a tournament and my parents were there, I played or lost my match, the input that I would have from my parents in terms of the tennis was pretty minimal. It was whenever a coach was there with me, I would discuss the match with my coach, and that was sort of it. And then I drove home and I would talk to my mom about school, and I would talk to my dad about something else. So they were both there in a very supportive role, but they really didn't. They didn't really have a lot of input in the on-court stuff. They left that to the coaches.
So when you were playing a tournament and your coach wasn't there, how did you manage that with your coach and with your parents?
So my parents would it was usually my dad. He would just sort of sit behind the fence, and over time he would figure out when to clap and when not to clap. And obviously he wanted me to win, but at the same time it was really important for him that I conduct myself in a manner that he would frankly not be ashamed of me. I wasn't allowed to throw a racket. I was never allowed to throw tantrums. And after the match was over, he might have told me, a thing or two, but it would be mostly tailored maybe towards my behavior or how I prepared before the match. Like if he noticed that I haven't properly warmed up, there would be something that he would point out. And after the match, I would sort of try to think about what was happening on the court. And if the coach wasn't there, we would have a phone conversation, or maybe we would talk about, the match or the couple of matches that I played, in the next few days over practice. But I think it sort of helped me starting out that I sort of had to analyze my matches on my own. So at the end of the match, I had to figure out what was going on. If I won, what did I do well? If I lost, what did my opponent do to hurt me? So I could convey it to my coach accurately, and then we could sort of assess our training plan and make adjustments going forward based on what I saw. So it was never on my parents.
Yeah, oh, that's interesting. And it's great that your parents were so supportive of your tennis. And then
I wouldn't be here
I'm
without
curious.
them. I'm eternally thankful.
Yeah. I'm curious about your coaches, when you were young, especially, does anyone stand out that really made an impact on you?
Yeah, so my last private coach that I had in Czech was a major influence on me, and in two ways really. We started working together when I would say 13 or 14 years old, and we worked until I stopped playing professionally at age 20. And the one thing that we started at the beginning, he had a pretty clear vision of how he wanted me to play and how I should play to sort of accentuate my strengths, and that was to be an all-court player and try to come to the net and sort of be aggressive. Now, when I was 12 or 13, I really wasn't strong enough. I wasn't big enough. My net game wasn't developed enough. So I would come to the net and I would get lobbed or I would miss an easy volley.
Right.
And after the match, I would get frustrated because I'm a competitor. I want to win. But at the same time, my coach was very supportive of the way I played and said, look, now you're maybe 12 and 13 and you're losing to some of these players, but come age 16, 17, you're going to be King Kong and you're going to be beating all these people.
Yeah.
So, and age 16, 17, I made the Czech national team, and his words came true. At the same time, I spent all these formative years with him, especially once I get to 16, 17, 18, and I'm traveling the world as a junior. I'm also a 17-year-old. I have questions about relationships. I have questions. How do I manage school with tennis? So we spent plenty of evenings just talking about that kind of stuff. And a lot of the person that I am and some of the views that I have about coaching and sort of the impact that coaches can have on players on and off the court came or come from being shaped by him. And I was also fortunate enough, sort of shifting gears in college, where I was fortunate enough to end up in a situation where my head coach at Baylor saw something in me that I didn't necessarily see in myself. And I'll give you an example. When I first moved to the US, I was really afraid of public speaking. Like if I had to do this, what I'm doing right now, I would worry about it 24 hours in advance. So I shared that with him when I first moved to the US. He said, Mike, we're going to have a preseason banquet and you're going to be the speaker for the first 5 minutes. You're going to welcome everybody. And I'm in cold sweat. I don't want to do it. I'm not comfortable with it. And he said, look, you're doing it. Just don't think about it. You're doing it. You're not getting out of it. I don't want any excuses. And then I get up there and I'm nervous. And then I speak for 5 minutes and everything is fine. And I get a big round of applause. And we had, several sort of interactions like this where some things that I would maybe be afraid of, or I wouldn't dare challenge myself, he made me do it. And once I sort of broke through that ceiling, now public speaking isn't a big deal anymore. So I think his impact was more so in this off the court stuff. And it made me sort of way more confident, I want to say, and willing to sort of accept challenges.
That's great. Yeah. So it sounds like he was really good at getting you out of your comfort zone. And that's something that was important.
Sure. Like now, in August, I was getting set to move to Canada from the United States.
Yeah.
And it's just, a lot of the training that I got from him, getting comfortable in uncomfortable situations, I'll be fine. I have trust in my abilities. I speak English. I'm thinking I'm going to be okay. I didn't stress too much. And a lot of that is because I was sort of exposed to some sort of adversity and I was able to push through it. And now it's not that big of a deal anymore.
So what would you say as a junior, what was the biggest thing that helped you be successful? In terms of, we see, you've had really good results. So obviously it took you, there's a lot that goes into getting to that level. Is there anything that sort of stands out that you think that helps you get there?
So I alluded to it before a little bit. So I had a clear view of my game, or my coach had a very clear view of my game. So I was never confused when I got on the court what it is that I should be doing.
Yeah.
And I've had that in college when we have a freshman coming in, and I asked them, so how would you like to play? Are you trying to take the ball on the rise and be on the baseline? Are you trying to rip forehands from everywhere, and so you need to be a little bit further behind the baseline? Do you have great touch? Are you going to hit drop shots, angles, all that kind of stuff? I knew I tried to stay pretty close to the baseline and play attacking tennis, so that's what I did. And that made it sort of pretty easy. That's how I played maybe the first few games. I didn't know the opponent. And then I would make some sort of a small adjustment within the game based on the opponent. So that helped me a lot when I had sort of this clear vision of going on the court, what it is that I wanted to do. And then, of course, the support of the parents and the Czech Tennis Federation and all the tennis coaches, all that stuff that goes into it, that made my travel schedule possible, that made my practices possible. So I went to a regular high school, so it was never a question. My mom wouldn't allow me not to go to school. So I had to go I was going to school in the mornings, and I would practice for an hour and a half, 2 hours in the afternoon. And that was it, because then it was important for my mom and later for me that I come home and study and be ready for school the next day. So obviously the Czech Tennis Federation wanted me to practice in the mornings because that's when all the other juniors would be there. But they were accommodating enough that usually somebody would wait and they would practice with me in the afternoons after I come from school. So the quality of my practice didn't suffer. So those would be, and one thing, frankly, the structure that I had in terms of, morning I go to school, in the afternoon I practice, and in the evening I study, served me very well, especially when I become a student athlete.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And so I guess, as a junior playing at that level, there's so much that you go through, right? You're balancing school, you've got friends, there's new things happening as a teenager, all kinds of stuff going on. There's injuries, there's travel, there's is there anything major that you really felt like you needed to overcome that along the way, something, because I know like a lot of our kids right now, they're going through a pandemic, right? And something a lot different than any of us have ever encountered. And so here's an obstacle that they're facing. And so do you have any advice and any experiences that you'd like to share with the group?
Sure. So one thing that I already mentioned, so when I was, maybe 16, 17, 18, I looked at some of my peers back then being at the Czech Tennis Federation or some of the other top juniors, and I see that they're practicing way more than I am because they're not going to school. They have agents and they have fitness coaches and they have all this stuff that all this support personnel that I really didn't have when I was traveling. I was usually part of a group and we had one coach with us. So I never really looked at it as a sort of disadvantage. It was simply the situation that I was in. I knew that I really couldn't do anything about the Czech Tennis Federation sending a physio with me to a tournament or what have you. So I was always pretty good at sort of understanding what the situation was and not trying to frown upon stuff that I had very little control over. Just like right now, I want to be out there playing tennis with the rest of you guys as much as you want to. But it's just something that we can do right now. And I would rather not spend a ton of time thinking about it because it's just going to make me sad. So in general, I've been pretty good about sort of compartmentalizing and only worrying about the things that I really can control and sort of let the other stuff slide. One other thing that I will tell you is when I was playing some of these bigger events, I sometimes was wondering, like, do I even belong here? Like, am I?
Right.
I'm just this guy who goes to regular school. I don't have a deal with a clothing company. I don't have 5 agents, watching me and giving me wildcards to all these tournaments. Can I even beat this player? But what I have learned, and next thing that sort of served me well in college, is I learned when I play a match, I play the ball. I don't play the opponent. And in college, you see a lot of times people saying, well, I get up for these big matches, but for these maybe smaller matches, I don't have to. Or when you go to a tournament, well, I'm going to beat this person, so maybe I don't have to focus as hard. And I'm supposed to lose to this person, so I'm already going to start making excuses before the match why I'm going to lose. And I learned pretty quickly that I just play the ball. I hit the ball over on the other side, it comes back, and then in the 20-25 seconds that I have in between the points, I try to sort of analyze what was going on, how I could sort of set up the next rally a little bit better. Yeah. But I learned not to worry too much about what the other person on the other side is wearing, what they're ranked. Are they throwing the racket? Are they cheating me? I try to sort of focus my own deal.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great message, I think, for the kids, focus on what you can control. That's the big message, right?
Yeah.
That's good. And then, so you know, you come off all this really good success as a junior, and then you decide on going to university. Was that always something that you had in your mind, or when did it come about that you decided that university was the path that you were going to take?
Sure. So I when I stopped playing professionally, and so for those of you, I try to, back then the college rules were a little different. So I tried playing professionally, then I stopped, and then I went to college. Right now, I couldn't do that anymore. The rules have tightened up.
Yeah.
But frankly, I didn't really think I was going to go to college. I thought I was just going to be in Prague, go to university, get a job, and sort of tennis will be this thing that's in the past. But I got a phone call back then on a landline from a coach in the United States who came across my name on some Czech rankings, and we don't have to go into all these details. But long story short, I went over for an official visit to the university, and then I came back home, and I sat down and I thought to myself, okay, what's the downside of me going and playing college tennis? What is the downside of this opportunity?
Mhm.
I can go over there. If I don't like it, I can always come back home. You know, so, and at the time I was 19, 20 years old, whatever I was. And the only thing I've ever known was Czech Republic. You know, and of course, traveling a little bit around the world, but you don't really get to experience the place because you're only there for a week or two.
You know a lot of tennis courts and hotels.
You know tennis courts at the hotels, but you
Yeah.
don't really understand the culture and meet a ton of people.
Mm.
So I said, why not? I can always try it, you know, and really the downside is extremely limited. And I stayed there for 15 years. And right now it's, I think it was easily the best decision that I've ever made, you know, where I sort of, the tennis helped me to get the education that, you know, I wouldn't be able to afford otherwise. And I made my mom proud too by getting a university degree. So
Yeah.
it worked out for all of us.
Sounds like it. She must be proud. That's great. And then so what really, you know, you did really well too, right? I mean, you've got basically 3 degrees, right?
Yeah.
And you know, and managed to not only do well academically, but also performed really well while you were competing in the US. Can you tell us a little bit about your results as a player, and also how you managed while you were at college, but also how you managed to do well both on and off the court?
Sure. So there's really 2 things that helped me in terms of managing the academics and the tennis. Number one was just my experience from high school, where I sort of, back when I was in Czech, I had this sort of strict schedule. You know, in the morning I go to school, in the afternoon I practice, and in the evening I study. And I really haven't deviated from that schedule in the US at all. You know, we had team practice at 2:30 every afternoon. In the morning I went to class, and then in the evening I went to library. And I either went to the library for 20 minutes or I went to the library for 3 hours. But I actually made it a point for 6 days out of the week, I left Saturdays open. I would go to the library and do do studying stuff in there. You know, I didn't go out there to check Facebook, but I would go to the library, do some studying. And again, it could have been 20 minutes. You know, the walk took me 20, I was there for 20, and then I went back home. Or if I had more to do, I stayed there for 3 hours and then I went back home. But it was just given in a schedule. In the evening, I go to the library, and it wasn't really a matter of decision. It's just what I did. And that served me really well. I never had trouble procrastinating. I never really missed assignments because I was in the library. That's sort of, I didn't want to just sit there and stare out the window. So that took care of a lot of stuff, just being organized and being on top of my stuff. And second thing that helped was I was in an environment and on a team where a lot of guys were sort of similar. You know, our head coach, it was really important for our head coach, for all of us to graduate and to graduate with a really good GPA. So I was surrounded by a coaching staff and by teammates who had the same goals that I did. So I wasn't really, no one was looking at me funny when I was studying. It was just, it was what we did. We were a bunch of high achievers, and that's what we did. And so the environment helped drag me along if I ever didn't feel like studying or didn't feel like practicing hard.
Excellent. Thank you. Really, really good answers. So basically what you're saying is be disciplined, stick to a schedule, right? And
really
surround yourself with people with, you know, who have similar goals.
Absolutely. And that's the way that I work. I'm not sure that everybody's going to work that way. But until it could be something as silly like, so right now we're in a lockdown, and I said that during a lockdown I will read a little bit more. So the way I know how I work and how I want to do it is I just, for an hour before bed, if I go to bed at 10:30, from 9:30 to 10:30 I read. That's just what I do. And there's no, I see 9:30 on the clock and I just go read. If I'm in the middle of something else, I stop the something else and I go read. Now I don't think I was sort of born this way. It was sort of, I had to work myself into it, but now the discipline is in me and I just do it. And obviously it's really important that you, like you're alluding to surround yourself with players like the coaches we have at ACE, who are there to support you in that journey, who sort of know what it takes to be an elite performer and can sort of guide you along when you maybe have a weak moment.
And then, so how did it go? So you know, you're there, you're competing, you finish up your degrees, and then you get into coaching. How did that come about?
So my first undergraduate degree is in finance, and so when I was playing, I thought that after my college career was over, that I wanted to be rich and work on Wall Street and be an investment banker. So my first job out of college was at this consulting firm called KPMG in Dallas, Texas. And what I did is I sat in front of a computer for 8 hours a day. And then I went home, and then I did the same thing the next day. And then I went home. And after about a year, I decided I really didn't want to be rich and work on Wall Street. That was not I was missing the sort of camaraderie of being among young people. I was missing the daily sort of physical activity of being on the tennis court. So, and I frankly missed being involved in the world of sports. So I came back to Baylor to get my master's degree, and asked the head coach, who was still the coach that coached me before, whether I could help out with the team. And I just fell in love with the other side of tennis. You know, now instead of worrying about my game, I try to help somebody else. And it was really, for me, it was way more rewarding than send an updated spreadsheet somewhere. So I was at Baylor for a couple of years until I graduated my master's degree. And then I just decided to make coaching my career, because I love the connection with the young people. I love that I stay physically active every day on the court, and it's something that's when someone gets their forehand better, or if someone gets a scholarship to a university, and I could have had maybe, you know, less than a 1% contribution to their success. It's a feeling that's unbelievable, and it's why I do it.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so what else do I have here for you? Well, I'm interested. You know, you're a coach, okay, at university, and so what are some of the things that you learned there from the coaches down there that you worked with? And let's start with that question. So, are there any big things that you learned for your own coaching and that you brought to ACE, or from your years of coaching down at college tennis?
Sure. So on a college team, you might have anywhere between 8 and 10, 11 players. And I learned pretty quickly that I'm going to have to adapt my coaching style to every single player. You know, just because something worked for me, or that I responded to a certain kind of coaching, doesn't mean that everybody's going to respond to the same type of coaching, or that I can sort of talk to everybody or maybe challenge somebody the same way. So I've learned to sort of tailor my style to the player more than I thought I would have to do in the beginning when I was starting out my coaching career. At the same time, I've always appreciated that the coaches that I had the pleasure of working with, both as a junior and then at Baylor, had this long-term view of what I could be. And my coaching check was mostly on the court, and let's say my college coach was more on the off-court stuff. And they were never shy about holding me accountable to a certain standard. And there might have been days where I wasn't really too pleased with something as simple as warming up before practice. You know, when I was 17, I once came to a practice and I sort of started playing without warming up, and I wasn't supposed to do that. So the coach had no problem just sending me home. Like, you're not gonna practice if you don't warm up. It's just not how this works. And in the moment, I'm upset. because I took the subway from home and now I go to the courts and I want to play. And now I have to go home for no reason. I have to tell my parents, why am I home early? So in that moment, I'm not happy. But now looking back, it was awesome. And look, it would have been the easiest thing ever for the coach to just let me practice and look the other way. But I appreciate that they held me to a high standard because I think it served me well.
Mm-hmm. So as a college coach, you've been involved in the process of recruiting players. What do coaches tend to look for in players, and what advice would you provide our players who have the goal of attaining a scholarship?
So the number one thing is you have to have a certain level, and that's just, it needs to be realistic in terms of what the school is looking for. So I'll give you an example. At Arizona State, we usually recruit players that have played in junior Grand Slams or who had an ATP point. So that was sort of the baseline. And if you were a player who had neither of those things, it usually took a pretty strong recommendation from a coach or from a person that we trusted in order for us to recruit you. Now, so that's sort of the first hurdle of the level that you have to clear. Now, once you clear that hurdle, I was always interested in how good of a competitor is this person. And by competitor, I mean, how well do they handle adversity? You know, how well do they accept responsibility for things that are going on and off the court? You know, I really don't want to hear somebody coming to practice and not being able to practice because they failed a test because they didn't study the day before. You know, I'm looking for players or for people that are that accept responsibility and they want to, and their career and their progress, frankly, because it's their career and it's their journey. I'm just there to assist them. I don't want to drag them along. Another important thing is, how well do I think that this person can represent the program overall? So if I'm a coach at Ace Tennis and I see somebody walking down the street with an Ace Tennis t-shirt, I want to be proud of that person being associated with a brand that I work for or that I represent. So that was always a big deal. If somebody had big off the court issues that we came across, something that was a non-starter for us, we didn't really care how good of a player they were. We would stop recruiting that person. Mm-hmm. And the third thing is stay on top of your academics. Student athlete, you know, the student comes first. And I've seen a lot of talented players that have come to college tennis. They were maybe not used to the academic rigor that a university requires, and they just can't handle the studying. And then if you're failing or your exams or you're behind on your homework, you can train well. And then in matches, you play a match on a Sunday afternoon, and you have a big test on a Monday morning, and you know that you haven't studied for the test. Well, now you're playing your match and you're thinking about the test that you're going to fail in 24 hours. You just can't play your best tennis that way. You know, so I think staying on top of the academics was always another sort of critical factor that we looked at, because it sort of drives and enables the person to be their best when they're practicing or when they're playing a match.
Great. So for, you know, you at Arizona State University, of course, as you mentioned, I mean, that's one of the top universities, which, you know, where you were working at. And so therefore players did need to come in at a pretty high level, you know, like competing at junior Grand Slams and so on. But obviously, as we know, there's so many other opportunities. So I just want to make it clear for some of the juniors there. Yes, it'd be great to strive for that, but there are so many schools out there. So your level is extremely important to get in. But you know, there's a lot of people who get a Division I scholarship who did not play Grand Slam junior tournaments.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to sort of, I didn't want to make it into maybe this goal that's way out there. And there's level out there really for everyone. And
well, not for everyone.
As long as you're willing to, for the people on this call, there's a school out there for you. Let me put it that way. And the way I would maybe approach, let me put it this way. Maybe we get a pointer about somebody that could be a really good player, but for some chance or another wasn't able to sort of show it in tournaments. Maybe, you know, he comes from a family that couldn't afford to take him to many tournaments, or he's been injured or what have you. And then my first phone call will always be the coach. So if it's somebody that trains in Toronto, I would call you, or I would call Sam, I would call Adam, or I would call Mario. And I would say, well, describe this person to me. And what I would ask for is, what are their work habits? Are they excited to get better? How do they handle adversity? How are their academics? Do you think that if I put an Arizona State t-shirt on this person, that I'll be proud of them when they walk across the stage in 4 years? So it's just sort of the day-to-day consistency, and frankly showing us as coaches what you can do, and that you're serious about your tennis, because ultimately we're going to be your biggest allies, especially in a day and age like today, when the coaches really can't come to Canada to watch you play tournaments because the border situation, and because there really aren't any tournaments. If I was looking to recruit a player right now, I would call you, or I would call Sam, and I would trust the reference because I trust you as a coach. So there's if you're willing to put the work in, and if you're disciplined, your coaches are going to be your biggest allies, and they'll help you out to put you in a situation that will be an unbelievable experience in Division I tennis, if that's what you're striving for.
And I will say, I personally have received a lot of phone calls from coaches in the US over the years. So that's for sure. They do call to check in. Okay, so just last couple of questions before I open the floor to the players to ask their questions. I'm just curious about your game. What would you say your strengths were? What enabled you to be successful as a junior on the court, and then as well, going on to the pro tour? Because for a lot of people, they might look at, oh, like top 350 ATP, that's not that great, but then there's a lot of people that do understand what a high level that is, and how difficult it is to attain that level. So yeah, just be interested to know when you were on the tennis court, what were your skills that really stood out, that helped you be successful?
Sure. So I've always had a pretty good return, and that served me pretty well, both in juniors and then later in the pros, because as you get to the top level of juniors, the serves are flying at 110, 150 miles per hour, but then in seniors they fly at 110, 150 miles per hour. There's not this massive difference. So the return translated pretty well. Now there were some other tactical considerations where the pros make you defend the service box a lot more sort of stricter than some of the juniors. But in general, my return served me pretty well. And I try to stay close to the baseline and control the game with my forehand. And sort of being aggressive and trying to make things happen on the court translated really well. Because maybe at the junior level, you might get to win a match when the opponent makes a lot of unforced errors, and sort of all you got to do is sort of put the ball in the court one more time than the opponent. But once you get to the pro level, the number of unforced errors just drops. So, and you're left a lot more to your own devices as to how to create offense and how to win the points, as opposed to not to lose the points. So this aggressive and proactive mindset that I had on the court, I think served me pretty well. Now what I would say the biggest difference between maybe the top juniors and maybe the lower level of the pros is I could take sort of quote unquote mental breaks or breaks in focus in a tennis match as a junior and still sort of be okay. I could lose my serve and early in the set and still sort of think, okay, I'll be able to break this person back and we'll get to a tie break and we'll sort of see how things go. I learned pretty quickly at the pros that you really can't take any mental breaks. A lot of the times if you lose your serve early in the set, that's kind of the set if you play a pretty good server. So I had to sort of really nail down my routines in between points and sort of figure out how to maintain my focus consistently from point to point, so that my level wouldn't sort of do this, but it'll be more like this. And that's, that took some practice, because it's not something that's that easy. Maybe you lose a long point and then you're frustrated for 2 more points, and now instead of love 15 it's love 40. Well, if you do that maybe at the junior level, you can maybe get away with it. If you do that on the pro level, you're in trouble. So that was something that I had to learn, the hard way.
And something like that, Mike, as you were sort of saying, it doesn't just happen overnight.
Doesn't.
That takes a lot of training, a lot of work to be able to stay so even keel and so focused from beginning to end, you know. So definitely, I think that's a big message for the kids to take home, you know, like really work hard at that right now, so that as you get older, you've got that skill.
Sure. I think if you guys look at any of the statistics or the data that's out there today, you only need to win about 55% of the points that you play in a match to win a match 6-3, 6-3. So that means if I tell you going into the match, you're going to lose 45% of the points, you're going to win the match 3-3, and you got to be excited about losing 45% of the points. It can't, again, some of the best players that I've seen, be it college or pro tour, everybody loses points. You know, Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer, they all lose points, but what they do really well is they don't let the point that they just lost affect the next point, and then the next point, and then the next point. They do a really good job of resetting and focusing on every single point.
Yeah.
So it's ours is a sport where you're gonna lose a lot of points, and you're gonna lose a match probably every week unless you win the whole tournament. And you gotta be okay with it, and you gotta be okay with learning from that, and not take it sort of as the world is coming to an end. And the best, I was on a team with Benjamin Becker. You might know that Benjamin Becker retired Andre Agassi in his last match at the US Open. And Benny Becker was the best I have ever seen at sort of flushing a match down the toilet after he was done with it. So we would play a match, he would analyze it for 30 minutes, and then win or lose, he was onto something else. He didn't sort of he didn't let that how he performed one week affect how he was getting ready for the next week or even for the practice the next day. Sorry, I went on a tangent a little bit.
No, but that's great. Yeah. Last question.
Sure.
What were some of your greatest experiences as a junior student athlete and as a pro? Just your greatest experiences in your journey.
Yeah. So as a junior, it's hard to look past about playing at Wimbledon, at the site. You know, I mean, growing up, I think that's the tradition of the grass and the all white. Once you sort of walk through that gate, it breathes a different kind of air. So playing in that facility and just being, I don't want to say I'm part of the history because I'm not, but I was there and I played on those courts, and I will never forget that. So that was awesome. In college, there was a bunch of them on and off the court, but what I will never forget is we played my junior year for the national championship against UCLA, and we were undefeated the whole year all the way until the final, and we lost the final.
Yeah.
So it was this heartbreaking moment where we were sort of inches away from being one of the few undefeated teams in history. But we as a team had an unbelievable night afterwards where we all got together and we told stories, and we were close as a team before that, but then we really sort of, and we keep in touch until this day. And that's a night that I'll never forget. And ironically, it came after a defeat. So it was something that had to do with the team atmosphere of tennis on the college level, which is of course different from the pros or the juniors, where it's an individual pursuit. And then on the pro tour, what I will tell you is I got this a wake up call. So 18 years old, I'm a top 10 junior in the world. I think I'm pretty good. But then I started at sort of the bottom level of the pro tour, and one of my first tournaments that I played was this small tournament in Croatia in February or March. And the setup was you started in pre-qualifying. Okay, now if you made it through the pre-qualifying, you get to the qualifying.
Yeah.
If you went to the qualifying, you get to the main draw. So I sort of started in the pre-qualifying. I won 5 or 6 matches. I lost in the qualifying, which normally 5 or 6 matches will get you you win a tournament. I lost in the qualifying, and that was it. And I finished that week with no prize money and no points. I was like, okay, this is gonna be a little different, and I really gotta know if I want this or not, because it's not gonna get any easier. And it was, of course, nothing like I experienced before in the juniors. Imagine playing at Wimbledon and 5 months later going through something like this. But it was just the reality of the situation, and it was a wake up call, a reality check where, okay, this is going to be a little different, and I still got ways to go.
Yeah, Really interesting. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor to the kids. So Lawrence, if you wouldn't mind unmuting, or how, I think, is that how we'll do it? Or will we have a raised hand? I think Dylan has a raised hand. So I'll go through and I'll
If
see if I,
everyone could,
go ahead, Lawrence.
yeah, if everyone can just unmute yourselves whenever you have a question, then that way.
Okay, so let's start with Dylan. Looks like Dylan has a question.
Why did you leave university to come to ACE?
So I'll tell you. I'm not gonna take forever. But when I was thinking about, or when I decided I was gonna move to Canada, I wanted to stay in tennis, and I went through sort of elimination process of where I thought I would fit best, and where I sort of thought that I could work with high-level tennis players. So first things first, I got to realize where it is that I wanted to live. And I decided I wanted to live in an English-speaking part of Canada. So I didn't want to move to Montreal because I don't speak any French. And I wanted to live in a bigger city. And eventually it came down to Toronto and Vancouver. And when I was doing my research, one name that kept coming up in terms of being sort of elite producers of junior tennis players was Ace Tennis. So I did a little bit of research into Coach Craig and into Pierre, and saw what they were about. And I sent Pierre an email with my resume, and we got on a phone call, and here we are. But what I was really looking for is I get excited when I work with motivated young people. And so far, you guys have been great. So I feel like I've made the right choice. But that was sort of the process that I went through.
Okay, I'm just looking for other questions. Let's see.
All right, we've got one here from Anna.
Okay.
If you were on the school tennis team, can you still join other school sports teams on a recreational level?
Sure. So let's say you're a scholarship tennis player and you go to school. There's nothing that prevents you from joining the intramural volleyball team or the chess club or whatever it is that you want to join. The challenge that you might run into is just time management. So obviously the school and tennis should come first, or first, second, or first and 1A. Now, if you can fit in ballet classes or volleyball or basketball or whatever else, by all means, there's nothing that prevents you in terms of the rules. The only limiting factor is going to be your time.
Okay. Andrea.
So I know you trained in Europe. So what's the difference between the training in Europe and training here?
I haven't really noticed any big differences. I think in general, the game of tennis is played all over the world, and we sort of all play it. There's no such thing as like a European style of tennis or American style of tennis. I mean, yeah, there's some countries where you see some players having a distinct style. Like traditionally the Spanish tennis players have been great baseliners with great stamina. Or you would see some Australian players who, especially back in the day, were really proficient at the net and were serving volleyers because they grew up on grass. But in general, in terms of the approach to tennis from the coaches, I really haven't seen any marked differences. Now, of course, the one different system, quote unquote, if you want to call it that, is the US college system, where United States is the only country in the world where you can do a high level sport as part of the actual school, or do it at the level that produces NBA players and NFL players. So US is, I think, one of the, if not the only country where some of the development is done at the college level and still produces elite performers, whereas in the rest of the world it happens in clubs or in academies like ACE.
Okay, Zahara and Niall.
Zaza.
It's actually Niall that has the question. So, how do you stay positive when you lose matches?
So when you lose a match, there's never a day we did everything wrong. or I've played a lot of matches in my life, and I've never had a match where everything I did was incorrect. Maybe I was a little too passive on a break point, or maybe I didn't make the right tactical choices at big points in the match. But I try to always start with something that I did well, and I can always find something. Maybe be it it could be something as simple. I stayed positive when I lost my serve, or I came to the net when I had a break point up and I got lobbed, or I missed an easy volley, but I made the right decision. So I try to always start with the positives, and trust me, Niall, you'll always find something positive when you play a match. And then you wanna make sure that you're aware of stuff that you could have done better. But I will always start with something that was positive. And look, if nothing else, you played a tennis match, you played a sport that you love, and I mean, there's really if you start from there, everything else just takes care of itself.
James and Luke.
Hi, I have a question. You talked about how your tournament in Croatia, it was like you passed the pre-qualifier but didn't get past the qualifying round. What did you do to improve in the next tournament?
So that was we were outside, we were on clay, and I had about 5 days before the next tournament was going to start. So frankly, I took a day or two off because I've just played for 6 days in a row. And then I try to spend those 3 days on the practice courts. I can't tell you exactly, but I know it was something I wanted to get my second serve better, because I felt that in the match that I lost, whenever I hit my second serve in, I was on defense right away. So I try to work on getting my second serve a little bit deeper into the box. Now, obviously, you can get that a little bit better in 3 days, but it's not gonna completely change. That's a process that's gonna take a little bit longer. But I know I wanted to focus on because my returns, I think I already alluded to that, my returns are always pretty good. But I wanted to do something with my serve. So I went on the practice court after taking a day or two off, and I tried to get my second serve better.
Thank you.
You're the man, Luke.
All right. Well, I guess I don't see any other questions here. So I think this would be a good time to wrap up.
You see Marcel is trying to ask me something in the
Okay.
in the chat.
Okay.
Marcel's back in the old country of Hungary still. What do you got for us, Marcel?
Oh, I've got it here. Did you have to give up many things to get a scholarship and become a successful tennis player?
Yeah. So, let's say I'm 16, 17 years old, and I have a Saturday morning practice, and all my friends are going out on a Friday night, and I want to have a productive practice on a Saturday morning, so I got to go to bed. So maybe I gave up some of the fun stuff that sort of is that you get growing up and being a teenager, with maybe not something that's as big of a commitment of time as a high level tennis career. But all that stuff, you add that all up. Once I maybe walk through the gates at Wimbledon, it all was worth it. So it's to get better at tennis, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of commitment, it takes a lot of consistent effort. But there will be it a one tournament, or be it you play a great point, or could be a college scholarship, whatever the case may be, there will come a moment where it's all worth it. So yes, you have to give up something along the way, but usually in the moment when you receive the reward, you don't really think about the things that you gave up.
Mike, how about at the end of that long run again, and then you lost against UCLA, and the friends that you made for life after that whole experience?
Yeah, I mean that room, Benjamin Becker, there were 2 other guys. I was in their weddings. We stay in touch constantly. That's priceless, and now obviously in that moment I wanted to win that trophy. But if you told me now you have a choice, you can either have that big trophy on the table right here, or you can have all those relationships, I pick those relationships.
Yeah. Okay. So, perfect. Do we have any other questions? Lawrence, am I missing anybody, or? No?
We can't hear you. Yep, Pierre wants to say something. There we go.
Hi,
I just like, hi, Michael. It was fantastic listening to you. Great job, and Craig as well. Look, I just want to make a few comments for everybody. Michael is an exception. Michael is what you call the blue chip. You know, everywhere there's one of those. There's not that many. And he was very fortunate to be that good. So, yes, he got to a good school. He was recruited. He had a great opportunity, and his life is very similar to mine because I went to a university where we finished third in the NCAA. And 2 years ago, I went to a reunion with 6 of my teammates that I played 50 years ago. Think about that. 50 years ago. And those people are part of my life.
Yep.
Michael got in touch with me because the coach where he was from the school where I used to be at Mississippi State. When I saw Michael's resume, it's the same as when you're a coach at university. You look, somebody's got an education. Somebody has gone through the whole process. If you know they've gone through the check system, you know they're solid. So the more solid people you surround yourself with, the better your chances are. And that's what's so great about our tennis family, because some of you, most of you will not reach Michael's level. But you know what? You're going to reach Michael's level in what you earn and what you live through this type of experience. You asked, did he give up a lot of things? Geez, my life was tennis. I'm 74 years old. My life is still tennis. On a Sunday afternoon, I'm listening to Michael. How fantastic.
I appreciate that, Pierre.
How fantastic. And I see all you guys asking questions and so forth, you know. And the most important thing that you should know, you're all very lucky to be in an environment where the coaches are well known. So if somebody wants to find out about you, they phone Michael, they phone Craig, they phone me. And what we tell the coaches, well, this guy might not be the best in the world, but he's going to be solid. And when he wins at number 5 for you, it's worth 1 point. And the guy that wins at number 1, it's worth 1 point. We became number 3 in the nation because at number 4, 5, and 6, we never lost a match the whole year. So, you know, for everybody, this is why I love this sport. And this is why it's great to have people like Michael and Craig here. So, you know, the last thing I'd like to say, you asked him, how does he feel after a match and so forth. And then listening to Michael, you can see the biggest, everybody says that tennis is a mental game. I mean, everybody says that. Well, you know what a mental game means? It means that after you lost, you go and take a shower and you're so upset you want to cry or whatever, but you know that you have to let go. And what you want to do is you don't want to stay where you are. You want to do what Michael just said. I did this okay. I didn't do that okay. At this time, I got scared. I should have done that. And that's how you learn. That's how you learn in life. So, Michael, thank you very much. Guys, great questions and everything. And, you know, I'm so proud of all you guys, what you've been doing during this. We're going to get back on the court soon, and we're going to be great. So,
Craig,
Michael, thank you very much.
Sure.
What's up, Doug?
Hi, Michael. How are you? Great.
I am
Thank
living
you
the
so
dream.
much for doing this. One of the things which really struck me that you said was how you, when you were developing and training in, you know, back home, when you were growing up, how you did not, you just accepted the lot that you were in and made the best of it, you know? And I think that's really a strong message to send to everybody, that to make the best of what you have, and look where you reached with what you have. But you didn't envy the people that were on the national team or in the other groups and so on. You just really, you just made the best of what you had. So thank you very much for for today.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Doug. I appreciate it.
Great
Thank
job,
you.
guys.
All right.
Bye,
all the best.
everybody. Have a good week.
Take care, guys.
Thank you,
All
everyone.
right. Well, thank you all. Thanks again, Mike, and great to see everyone. And hopefully, yes, we'll see you at some point on the courts and keep on doing those Zoom calls with the coaches, staying in shape and connected. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.